You're listening to Spark TV, where we bring you daily interviews with real women in business at all stages. I'm your host, Danielle Lewis, and I am so grateful to have you here. I feel like business takes a long time. You know, the first idea you have, the first piece of content you put out, the first website you have, the first, statements, messaging that you make about your business, you often look back 5 years later, 10 years later, however
Yeah.
many years later,
Oh
and
my
you're like,
gosh.
what
Quite
the? Ugh.
confronting, actually. Yes. I've
But
definitely done that.
it's that time and that space and the experiences that help us consolidate our ideas, that help us solve problems, that help us grow.
Yeah.
I think of, when people say, oh, I always get my best ideas in the shower. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, because you're away from the problem and you're in this beautiful state of relaxation,
Mm,
energy. Of course, that's where you get your best ideas.
yeah. And you're more in your body, actually.
Mm,
Like there's something about taking the dominance of the mind and the rational thoughts out
yeah.
of the way. Like that's a big in my work as well, in the therapeutic work. It's very much about that. How do we get into the body, the wisdom of the body? It's massive, you know.
So how did you get into then the business stream, which is the somatic therapies? How did that come about?
Weird. I've only recently started calling it that. I've been
Mhm.
doing it for a really long time and not knowing what to call it. I was never calling myself a coach. I know I'm not a coach, but
Mm,
over the years, I've developed so many practices and resources and tools and experiences and trainings and just so many things. I've always been kind of obsessed with how do we become clearer
yeah.
on what if it were easy? What if we could feel fully alive and be in touch with the possibilities in our lives without being so held back by, our
Mm,
past hurts and our tension that we carry in the body from life, from experiences that have not been easy or have turned into, held trauma or held emotion, stuck emotion. And, these are things that we all have. But when they get to the point where they actually stop you from living, or your self doubts actually become so, so loud that you can no longer move forward, what do you do then? Or worse, things can morph into panic attacks, nervous breakdowns, chronic pain, chronic inflammation, diseases, and it's all really, I believe, stemming from this inability to listen to the messages the body gives us all the time. So how do we get back in tune with that? And that's something I've kind of always been obsessed with since I was quite young. And so probably because I needed to be, probably because I had stuff like that going on from a really early age, had sort of early life adversity that happened, some of which happened before I was 2. So that's
wow.
non-verbal, like that's in your body. It's
Yeah.
100% in your body. So it does change. I think it's always changed my way of viewing the world a little. And yeah, I've just kind of gathered it. And now I've done training as well as a somatic therapist, in various different ways, and also as an educator. Some of what I do is actually education. It's this is the rig you're running. This is how it works. This is how you hack the
Mm.
system. You know.
Isn't it wild? Like, this is just so powerful and so important and something that I'm sure people will go through life and never know about.
I'm astounded actually. Sometimes people come in, even today, like you can have a client and you say, "Have you ever experienced anything like that before?" They'll go, "No," and it blows me away. And I
Yeah.
love, I love that I'm able to help them experience something completely different.
Mm. I think
It's
about my
amazing.
mum, like when I
Yeah.
have conversations with her and I think about what I know now, and I just, sometimes I hear the words she says and I think, oh my God, you need to go to a bloody therapist, woman. I don't say that, don't worry. Well, I have said that, just a lot nicer than that. But it is interesting, you think about the different generations, even with my
Yes.
siblings, how different we are, but the
Mm,
different generations and what you've gone through, what is socially acceptable.
yes.
And then you think about what we know now, where, someone like you and I can sit here and talk about how important this practice is. And I know, like people will be listening going, what are you two talking about? Like,
Some
what
people
is
will.
this?
That's right. But the beauty
Yeah.
of it is, I tell you what's beautiful, more and more, the science, medical science,
Mm,
psychological research is actually bearing out in evidence exactly what so many cultures other than Western culture have always known. You look
yes.
in, the cultures that are older than ours, so Ayurvedic medicine or Chinese medicine, they're all based around these fundamental principles of emotion or energy moving in the
Mm,
body. And we have lost that vernacular.
yeah.
But it was there. We just rode over it with the Enlightenment in the Middle Ages. That's all. We just got really rational. We just made a choice as a culture that we would prioritize the brain, and the church has something to do with that, and history has something
Mm,
to do with that. But reasons aside, that's where we've ended up. But
yeah.
even scientific rationalism is now actually proving that these modes of healing or therapy or treatment are extremely effective. And I have, people referred to me by psychologists and doctors because
Mm,
they know that there are certain limitations in those systems. I'm not knocking them. I'm absolutely going to doctors and psychologists
yeah.
as well. But there are
Yes.
elements of trauma and certain things that can happen at
Yeah.
a level that is not accessible through that conventional, medicine.
That wraps another episode of Spark TV. Shout out to Spark TV sponsor IP Australia for their amazing support of the Spark podcast and women in business. And if no one tells you today, you've got this.